bless our town at this time of the year at the Headland Women's Refuge. For $35, you can participate in giving a blessing bag to ladies who need it. And if you want to come and grab hold of this, I think it'll be outside on the table if there aren't any more. I'll give that to you. There we go. And Lil has made, I'm going to do this at the beginning so I don't forget at the end. But Lil has made chicken enchiladas, and I now know what they are. They are chicken wraps, but they're hot, and they've got sauce on them and cheese. Don't you think I'm clever? You can buy one for $5, and I said that's just way too cheap. But anyway, there you go. She's made lunch, so she's going to sell out today, and then you'll have to make more next time, whatever it is you make. Actually, her cooking, her lunch, I think lunch and food is just like, that's the real communion, if you ask me. Hanging around after church, when you sit down, you catch up with people, you need to talk. And it's very loud out there, I have to say, it's really loud. We're going to have to try and work on that as we build and all the rest of it. But please, hang around, enjoy the company of each other, eat some food, drink a coffee, whatever you like. All right. So, 7 relationship secrets. Stop, start, connect, engage, balance, mingle, and fight. Who's looking forward to fight? Do you know, it's quite odd because, in fact, fight is not what you think it is. Engage is actually all about fighting. That's today. So you're here, and you're ready to fight? Ready to enjoy a fight? Okay. No. Fighting can be both damaging and helpful in a relationship. And if I would continue my story from last week, I started out being one who bottled up and held in and was sort of passive, angry, aggressive, that sort of thing. And it wasn't a good thing for my marriage. And I got told early on about, by God, I remember the moment, and I just felt this drop into my spirit and my understanding, my consciousness, and said, no, you've got to fight. You've got to open up. You've got to actually speak and get your opinion out there and say, get into the argument. And I was surprised because I thought, bottling was the godly way. And so I got into that. I thought, okay, well, I've got an excuse now. So I opened up, and I think I took it too far, I have to say, that I got very good at arguing and getting loud. And I thought back to a time where John Finkeldy, my coach, he's the overseer of this church for about 30 years, he said, I remember him saying that he and his wife sat their 2 teenage 20-year-old children up on stage during a relationship and parenting series and allowed somebody or a couple of people to ask them questions about John and Di's parenting skills, while the senior pastors of a church of 700 or plus went out, left the room, left their kids on stage and the kids were asked these questions. What were your parents like as parents? How did they do? Were they good parents? Were they bad? What did they do that was good? What did they do that was bad? What would you not do in your own life? Can you imagine if your kids, those of you who have kids, can you imagine what your children would say about you? Or if you're younger, what would you say about your parents? So I asked my children to send me a couple of videos. And Lil goes, what did you do that for? What are you, stupid? Because, seriously, you see us on Sunday. We don't fight in church. That's one of our rules. What are your rules? I had a friend down at the jeweler's shop when I was working down there, and she was incredibly fiery. And she would get into a fight really quickly over stuff. And I loved stirring her up. So I just say, and the funny thing is, when she would get angry, she was working at the watch bench, you see, and she worked standing up and I worked sitting down about 2 meters away. So she's about there where my Bible is. And I'd make some statement about something, and I knew the buttons to push. And she could not look me in the eye when she'd argue. So she'd be working on the watch, and as soon as I would make some statement, we'd be having this conversation, then I'd make a controversial statement, and she'd go like this, body language, she's doing the word, and just looking down here, which is really good for me because I could laugh like this, and she wouldn't see. I know that's really not very nice, is it? But I enjoyed just stirring her up and talking about. And I said, what are you like at home? What's your poor husband, when you guys have a fight? And she says, we fight. She said, well, what happens? Oh, things get thrown and smashed. And I said, mate, you don't have to live like that. How long have you been married? Oh, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, why? I said, why do you do that? Have you changed? Have you shifted? Have you changed the way that you argue and you fight? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, what are your rules for fighting? And she said, don't be ridiculous. There are no rules for fighting. You just fight. And I thought, is that right? Do you think there's rules for fighting? I think there is rules for fighting. She said, nobody has rules for fighting. I said, everybody has rules for fighting. I was going to bring in a couple of props here today about things not to throw at your partner, including plates, pots, and knives. Is that one of your rules? I said this to her. I said, do you ever throw knives at your husband? She goes, no. I said, well, why not? Don't be stupid, you just don't do that. I said, that's one of your rules. I said, your challenge now is to choose the rules that you have and identify some of the rules, and then the things that you do, start working on those and change the rules. It's possible to change the rules. So, as we look at Engage, which I wish was Captain Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek and Engage, but it's not. As we look at Engage, what do we do when we engage each other and there's stuff going on in our relationships? And there's stuff that we need to shift. There's stuff that's not fun. I hate fighting. I just really hate arguing. I like chilling out, taking the quiet way. And some people really enjoy a good blow up. They get invigorated by it. What's really sad is if someone who enjoys a good fight is married to someone who doesn't enjoy a fight at all, then you've got a problem. You've got an even bigger problem if you've got two people that enjoy a good fight, because then you've got things flying everywhere. But if you've also got a big problem if you've got two people that bottle up and don't fight. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter who, whether you're a bottler or a blower, and who you're married to, fighting's a problem if you let it be a problem. And it has been a problem throughout our marriage, and I have to say, this is, one of the things they tell you as pastors is don't preach about stuff unless you've got it settled, unless you've got a handle on it. I'm breaking that rule today because I don't know that I'll ever really get a handle on it. I think I'm learning, I'm changing, I'm learning bits and pieces. I learned stuff from the book that I'm reading at the moment, and I think that's the thing. You just keep learning, changing, doing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It's a bit like our backyard. People come around and say, oh, this is a great backyard. When did you do this? I said, well, it's taken about 14 years. It's 2 hours every weekend for 14 years, and to get it to look like this. You should see photos of it early on. That's the way our lives are, aren't they? We grow them little bit by little bit by little bit. If you're fighting with your spouse, your husband, your wife, your best friend, your teacher, your boss today, the good news is that you can change it. You can engage in a better way, and we're going to look at some better ways in a moment, but I'm going to play you a video from my daughter, Chloe, who's 25.
Daughter, Dad just asked me to shoot you a little something about what I remember about fights. So I remember Mum and Dad, I probably don't remember too many times that they fought in front of us. Like, there was enough. I remember one was in the kitchen one time, but then later they'd come back and they'd kind of be like, I'm sorry. And then I remember another one in the car, like on the way to something. Dad probably hadn't told Mum about something or somewhere that they needed to be, and Mum probably just felt a bit stressed out about it. I don't really know what it was about, but after a bit of like awkwardness, I just remember sitting in the back of the car with the boys, and we were just a bit like, this is awkward. But then a little bit later on, it had like died down. They sorted it out, and they were actually really good about it. They'd come up to us and be like, "Sorry guys," I said sorry to Dad. Dad said sorry to Mum. It's all good. So I think that they definitely had like little moments. They probably had other little tips away from us, but yeah, I just remember they never like threw anything, which is kind of cool. But they always made sure that they patched it up in front of us, and that we knew that they were sorry, and they usually said sorry to us as well. Anyway, I love you, Mum and Dad. I hope you enjoyed that little piece. Have a great day at church. Bye.
So I think I remember what she's talking about. I think I remember which car trip she's talking about. Yesterday I thought it was like when they were little. I actually think she's talking about when we went over to Sydney about 2 years ago. I think it was the one driving down south? Okay, Lil remembers which, so it could have been either, there you go. But we're not going to fight about it. And so we're going to look at... It's amazing what you fight over. Tell you what, we've almost been divorced twice in our marriage. Almost got divorced twice. The first time was because she tried to kill me, which I think was really quite a valid point in time to do it. It was 2 weeks after we'd got married, and we were driving in the States, and she couldn't get the handle on where to drive in the road, and so she was sitting on she was on the right side of the road. That was the good thing, that right. But you know how you sit in the right side of the car, and you're used to driving down 2 tracks like that, so you're used to sitting on this side of the road? Well, she was now sitting in this side of the car, but still sitting on this side of the road. And so trucks and parked cars and poles were flashing past my windscreen and mirror at a huge rate. And I activated my God-given right to open up and speak. Second time. You want to know the second time? Okay. Lil wanted the bookshelf on this wall, and I wanted it on that wall. Right. Enough said. That was a 3-day fight. Okay. You want to know who won, don't you? I'm not going to tell you. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 18. Here's how not to fight. After David was finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son, and there was an immediate bond between them. Jonathan loved David. From that day, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. So there's this whole relationship, family relationship going on. David's just killed Goliath. He's just a legend. Saul loves him. Saul's son loves him. We think that David was probably half the age of Saul. Jonathan, the son of Saul, was maybe about 25 years older than David. Think that David was a boy and Jonathan was a man because he'd been around for a while, been in the army for quite a while. When David was 25, we think Jonathan was about 50. They're not two boys. But there's this relationship going on here. So anyway, move down a little bit, and this relationship starts to struggle. Verse 7. David had been out fighting a battle. He came back in, and he'd done some amazing things in the fight. He'd led the army well. And the women sang this song. The girls sung this song as they came in to the city, as the army came back in victorious. They said, Saul has killed his thousands and David his tens of thousands. And Saul got very jealous. And from that day on, next they'll be making him their king, he said. Verse 9, so from that day on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul. It's very interesting. We won't go into why was it a tormenting spirit from God. Israelites sort of blamed everything on God. The deal is Saul stepped out into an area which was lack of faith and jealousy and anger. And what happened was the devil took the opportunity to enter in and influence Saul's life and cause problems in Saul's life. Here's the deal. If you don't deal with things like anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, the devil has a foothold into your life and into your emotions. Don't give him the opportunity to get a toehold into you. So, the very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. He was angry, he was spitting. David was playing the harp as he did each day. David would come in and he'd play the harp for Saul to bring a sense of peace and a sense of the presence of God into the place, like there was this morning during worship. As he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall, but David escaped him twice. So it wasn't just, what did you do that for? Oh, I'm sorry. It was like, throw the spear. David dodges it, goes scuttling around the room, knocking over the vases and the tables. Saul goes running over, grabs his spear and throws it at David as he's shooting out the door, hits the wall again, digs into the wall. There's a bit of a battle going on here. Saul, in verse 12, was then very afraid of David. And for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away to be commander over 1,000 men. Okay, jump on to the next chapter, verse 19. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David, but Jonathan, because of his strong affection, told him what his father was planning. Verse 9, but one day when Saul was sitting at home with his spear in hand, the tormenting spirit from the Lord came upon him again as David played his harp. Saul hurled his spear again at David. David dodged out of the way, and leaving the spear stuck in the wall, he fled and escaped into the night. Okay, one more. 1 Samuel chapter 20, down around about verse 30. There's a deal going on here. Saul is now out and out trying to kill David. It's public knowledge. Jonathan, everyone knows it. Jonathan knows it. David goes to Jonathan and says, your dad's trying to kill me. He wants me to come to this dinner, but I can't come to the dinner because I know he wants to kill me. And Jonathan says, no, I've talked to him. I've persuaded him once before. It's going to be okay. He's settled down. I spoke to him. He's reasonable. We reasoned together. It's okay. David said, I don't think you're right. So Jonathan, they come up with a plan where David is away, he's hiding outside, and Jonathan goes to the dinner. First day, Saul looks around, David's not there. He thought something must have happened to him, he couldn't make it. The next dinner, he was expecting him to be there. He says to Jonathan, where's David? Jonathan says this. David's place was verse 27 in Samuel 20. But when David's place was empty again the next day, Saul asked Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse been here for the meal either today or yesterday? Jonathan replied, David earnestly asked me if he could go to Bethlehem. He said, please let me go, for we are having a family sacrifice. My brother demanded that I be there. So please let me get away and see my brothers. That's why he hasn't been at the king's table. Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a whore, he swore at him. Do you think I don't know that you want him to be king in your place? Shaming yourself and your mother? As long as that son of Jesse is alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him so I can kill him. But why should he be put to death, said Jonathan, asked his father. What has he done? Then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last Jonathan realized that his father really was determined to kill David. Saul, on the 1 second, at one moment is saying, he's got to die, because if he doesn't die, you won't be king. You won't live to be king, because David will kill you once he's king. You won't even be the king, and I want my legacy to carry on through you. And then Jonathan said, but he hasn't done anything wrong. Well, I'll kill you then. It's like logic, nah, out the window. This guy is so far from logical argument and discussion. They call him a madman, raving like a madman. What I love about reading the Bible is that some of these stories just push the envelope right to the end. And I would hazard a guess that there's not one person sitting here this morning that has thrown a spear at someone because they were in an argument. Plate, maybe. Forks, whatever. We had one friend I was having a discussion with, and she said they had to go and get a new dinner set. And years later, 10 years later, I asked them, so how's the dinner set scenario going? She said, what? I said, well, you remember back that time? Yeah. Oh, we don't do that anymore. Christians, allowing the love of Jesus to start to take control and live out through you, it doesn't just happen. You actually have to make some choices, some decisions. So you can learn to fight right. So that's the phrase today, is engage. Fight right. We can have that one up there just so if you want to tweet it, if you want to put it on Instagram or Facebook or make up a little screen, you can do that. Our hashtag for C3 Church is hashtag C3PH. Just pop that up there. And what I want to do now is I'll just play you another one of my children. Luke, the youngest one. Josh didn't manage to do one. He said, sorry, Dad, I didn't manage to get one today to you, but I said, that's fine. Don't know what Josh would have said, but here's Luke.
How you doing? Dad asked if I could share what I remember from my childhood of him and Mum arguing. Now, I don't remember a lot, but something I do remember is that when they did have one, that they took it off to another room. Now, that's probably something good that I learned, that Mum and Dad did have disagreements and they did have arguments, but possibly something that I could have learnt further is how they had them and the conflict resolution sides, the problem solving and troubleshooting. Now, something that I've taken from Mum and Dad is how they would come and apologise to us about not having the disagreement, but about the emotions and anything bad that was said or anything that was a bit sharp or pointed. And that's something that I've very much valued and have very much appreciated and learnt from my mum and dad, who are amazing. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Luke. I'll pay you later. So I don't put that up there to say, look, aren't we wonderful parents? That's not really the reason. But I was genuinely curious to think, what influence has my parenting and our parenting had on our children? Because the thing with having a fight and having a blue is that you don't plan the times to do it, do you, really? You don't say, well, next week we've got an empty spot at Monday afternoon, let's have a fight. They just happen whenever and wherever and at the wrong times, but there do seem to be some patterns. The thing is, how do we shift that? Well, I'm going to quickly run through maybe 6 or 7, I've got about 8 here, but I'll see how many we get through. And first thing is that I can say about fighting is the Bible. Do you use the Bible as your foundation, as your basis for all the major decisions in your life? Because I can say that if the Bible is the authority to your decision making and your arguing and your discussion, then you have got something to go to help you in everything that you need to decide and discuss. Whether it be forgiveness, unforgiveness, love, kindness, calling names. Do you know the Bible says don't call names? Don't call your brother a fool. You'll be in danger of the fires of hell. There are rules there that you do not step over. Don't be a name caller. Names, words, they hurt. Use your words for good. Don't use them for bad. So go to the Bible. There's so much in there. There's Proverbs. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. There is Bible verses. Husband, love your wife. Forgive one another. If someone has something against you, go to them and sort it out. So the Bible, of course, has to be your first point of change and living change as you start to work out how to fight right. Second thing, have you got a good friend, a discipleship partner? Do you have someone that you can go to and you don't just say, my wife's being really horrible right now. You want to hear what she did, blah, blah, blah. You don't just do that. When I say you don't just do that, sometimes there is a case where you can talk about your life, your partner, your kids, your this, your that, and yet they're a discipleship partner. If they are operating the way a discipleship partner needs to operate, they will hear you and then say, what are you going to change about that? What's your responsibility to shift? They're not, oh yeah, she's really horrible, he's really horrible. They don't just agree with the negativity. What they actually do is, well, you need to pull yourself together. You need to change this, you need to change that, you need to, and discipleship partner is someone who will then at the end of it pray with you and say, let's bring God into this scenario. That's the second thing. If you haven't got a good discipleship partner, get one. I can remember my mum yelling at me. We were out in the middle of the countryside and I don't know what I'd done, but she was going off. Yell. It was right on bedtime, 7 o'clock, I think, 7:30, something like that. And she was really angry, and I don't know whether it was just me or my brothers, but she was angry. And then the phone rang and she walked over and she's, hello. I was like, so I parked myself on the couch because she was in a really nice mood now. She was being so nice. That she turned around, she saw me on the couch, and I was way past my bedtime now, and I just sat there and I waited and smiled and waited till she got off. 20, 25 minutes. I said to her, Mum, she hung up, she said, weren't you in bed? Not like before. I said, weren't you in bed? I said, oh, I wanted to ask you, how can you go from screaming and yelling and being so horrible to getting on the phone and being all sweet and nice instantly? How do you do that? This is a 7-year-old asking the questions, right? And she goes, oh, did I, dear? No answer. That was it. Oh, did I, dear? Off you go. But you know, who was on the other end of the line? Florence Powell, who was my mum's accountability partner. They would get up, they would talk about God, they would talk about what God's doing in their life now, what challenges they're facing, how they're changing. They enjoyed each other's company, and because we're so remote, their accountability catch-up was in the evening by the old dial-up phone. Accountability partners, if you haven't got somebody, please, for your sake, find someone. Third thing is you can use to help you shift the way you fight, and that's just reading good material, good books, like this book I'm reading now, 7 Secrets to an Awesome Marriage by Kim Kimberly. It's got some good stuff in there. You've got podcasts, you've got preaching, you've got DVDs. There's so much stuff around these days. Don't just sit back and let it happen. Actually prepare yourself for the next fight. What about this? Number 4, a connect group. Are you in a connect group? A connect group is life's second biggest change agent. I'll leave that one there. 5, do you choose your battles? Some battles are just not worth fighting. When you're having a battle, you can start out by saying, God, always come to God first, right? God, is this battle worth fighting? Is this battle worth fighting right now? Is this battle worth coming back to later?